Welcome to the Archive Room, the stories behind the footage. Before we dive into today's episode, if you're enjoying these conversations about how archives actually work and the people shaping the stories we see on screen, make sure you subscribe to the Archive Room wherever you're listening. And if something sparks a thought, leave us a comment. Thanks for your support. Welcome to the Archive Room. I'm your host, Dominic Dare, and this is our co-host, Sandra Coelho.
Hiya.
Today's guest is David Peck. He is founder and president of Reelin In The Years Productions, one of the world's leading music, entertainment, and historical archives. Since founding the company in 1992, David has built an extraordinary collection spanning over a century of performance footage and decades of in-depth interviews with cultural icons from across music, film, television, politics, and the arts. His producing work has earned major industry recognition, including a Grammy nomination, a Peabody Award, an Emmy nomination, and his company has even received Focal's Footage Library of the Year. Most recently, his archive formed the backbone of the landmark series David Frost Versus, an achievement celebrated on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange itself. But it's a real pleasure to welcome you. David, welcome to the Archive Room.
Thank you. And yes, that was a really strange moment in my life to also have my 16-year-old son stay with. That was his spring break from school, and he had some stories to tell when he got back. Yes, that was Wilfred Frost, David's son, had asked us to join him, and I didn't realize we were going to be up on the, whatever you want to call it, overlooking the New York Stock Exchange. There are moments in life that are utterly surreal. That was probably the most, because it's so out of anything that I do. I mean, it has nothing to do with tapes and what have you, but it was pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. It was pretty cool.
It doesn't really get much cooler than that. A lot of noise as well. And so on the back of that, I mean, to get to that height, David, you've been working in this industry for years. Can you just take us through from beginnings to where you are now and how you've built this amazing archive collection?
Well, you know, I've been a fan of music since I was an infant. Now, my older brother, who got me into music, 10 years older, tells me this story, although I have no recollection. Apparently, when I was 2 years old, I could tell you which Beatles song was on what single. Like, well, that's Revolution, that's Hey Jude. And before I could read, he tells me the story, I don't remember it. So it was almost like I was destined to do something in music and related. And when I was 18, I met a guy here in San Diego who showed me literally bootleg copies of the Beatles and Stones and Ed Sullivan. This is 1984. And I just got hooked. I just was like, wow, there's footage of these bands that I love. It was because I was alive in the 60s, but not mentally alive. When in 66, it was always like a winner of the past. So to me, archive and all of that was like, wow, something that was captured on film, on tape, what have you, and to experience it. And I was bitten. So I was just, the longest time just trading with people and so forth. And then in 1989, Jessica Berman Bogdan of Global Image Works, I'll never forget this day, phone rings, and this woman I had never spoken to, she goes, well, this is Jessica. I'm working with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. I understand that you have material that you've collected, and we'd like to, find out more about it. And I said, well, I don't own any of it, but it didn't matter. And so I remember getting my first check, and it was like, I don't know, $400, whatever it was, and my name like in an insert in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame program. Then it was like, maybe there's some money in this, because the thing is, even though I run this professional company, I'm still a collector, but not in a negative connotation. It's still like when I see something that moves me, the fan in me goes, wow, that's an amazing performance. I can't believe that was shot. And then the business side says, ooh, what documentary is going on that I can immediately call and say, you need to see this piece of footage. So there's that part of me always exists. And I think in many ways, it sets me apart about a lot of people in the industry, is that I'm just, in my heart, I'm this diehard fan. I mean, everyone loves their work, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, it's like, I think I'm a freak of nature in that regard. And so it went from there to just doing like research and so forth. And then eventually in 1998, I signed my first representation deal. And then, and it went from there. And I because there were so many libraries in America, at the time it was Research Video, now Retro, and Historic. I think it was ARIQ then, whatever. But I figured that there was all those guys already had like all of whatever archives to be had in America were kind of locked up. And so I went and looked at Europe. And so all of these government run television stations, I started approaching and just flying there and calling them at 3:00 in the morning because of the time difference from here in San Diego, and just slowly sort of built it up from that. But all the while, I mean, I can remember every time I would find something in these European archives. This was, long before YouTube or anything. So it was just like people had no idea of the wealth of material in Europe because all of these bands toured all of these countries, and there were, dance shows, and also in Europe for the most part, since these stations weren't commercial, they'd put an artist on for half an hour or an hour, and
Yeah.
you get to really experience them. So I was just, I mean, that, taking a short story and making it long, I guess.
David, can I ask, how did Jessica know how did she know you had this material?
Let me think. You're making me go way back now. I think just word of mouth. I think I was just so, as this young person, was so motivated. And, Jessica was a seasoned researcher and clearance by that point. So she was, still is, obviously, but was certainly one of the best in the business. And there weren't a lot of people doing it at that point. She was definitely leading the pack. There are a lot more researcher and clearance people here in 2026 than there were in 1989. So I'm not quite sure, but you know what? If you have Jessica, which I'm sure you will on a future episode of this, because obviously Global Image Works is great. Yeah, and she may not remember either.
Just talk a little bit about what exceptional moments, given over the years, where you found something from a collection you've just gone, oh my goodness, that's just gold. What stands out?
One of them was at, just comes to mind as many examples. I was with Phil Galloway, vice president of my company. Major shout out to Phil. And we were in Australia at Australian Broadcasting Corporation, which I've worked with now for, I think, 2002. Anyhow, I was there, and I remember sitting at a desk, and the gentleman that worked there, he's not there anymore, was like, oh, there's some stuff, and he goes, well, this is just some Doors footage. And I'm looking, and I'm sitting there, and I had this moment. I go, look at the guy. I go, do you know what this is? He goes, it's the Doors. I go, no. Yes, it's Jim Morrison. But what it was at that point, this would have been, Phil and I were there in September of 2004. I know because my daughter was born a few months later. As a parent, you remember these things. And at that point, the last known performance footage of the Doors to exist at the time was their performance at the Isle of Wight Festival in August of 1970. And that's what everyone thought was the last moment that Jim was seen on stage with the Doors. Australian Broadcasting Corporation sent their film crew. They have a really cool show called GTK, Getting to Know. They sent their film crew to Los Angeles in the Doors rehearsal space. And there is Jim Morrison with the group doing John Lee Hooker's song, Crawling King Snake. And I'm just like, I just can't believe this. And I remember at the time, I was dealing with Danny Sugarman, who was then the manager of Doors. And ironically, now I represent the Doors archive, which is kind of funny turn of events, but with Jeff Jampol and so forth. I immediately, might even been from Australia. I was like, may I cuss on here? Is it okay? I'm going to,
Yeah, go
holy
for it.
shit. I cannot, I just like, the F-bombs were flying, let's just say. And he's like, what? And I go, yes. He goes, are you sure? I go, I'm positive, because Jim had his full-on beard. He was just like, he didn't look good because he died, 4 months later. And so I think at the time, Rhino Records, which was the label that had their masters when they were on Elektra, Warners and all that, were doing some type of box set. They go, we want to put this out. And I remember we were friendly with Ray Manzarek. And I spoke to Ray, and Ray saw it. And he goes, yeah, I don't want it out. And Jim looks like he's about to die. And we're like, he did. And we realized that the significance of this piece of footage, which, just to sideline for a second, that's one of the things about discovering moments like this for me, is that I get to, by discovering something, or you guys discovering someone or someone else, is change the narrative of what we think either this person was like, what they did or did not do. Archive without AI doesn't lie. And so in this case, we changed the narrative, what existed of this band, and Ray didn't want it out. I think it was probably too painful for him, but Danny Sugarman was like, no, this is coming out. And it did. It was like a bonus on a CD box set with a DVD. I can't remember, a few years. But that one comes to mind. And the other one was the American Folk Blues Festival material from Germany, which we had found and turned into this release, which got my one and only Grammy nomination that you alluded to in your intro, Dom. So it's just finding moments, are just like, I'll give you a perfect example, non-music. In the David Frost archive that we have, David, of course, interviewed the Shah of Iran, which is relevant today with everything going on in Iran. Well, he interviewed the Shah of Iran, when he was in exile in January of 80 in an island up in Panama. Well, we found in Frost vaults all the raw material. Program that aired was, 50 minutes or something. We found all 9 hours of the interview with the Shah. But the other thing we found was in 1976, he had done this program called The Crossroads of Civilization. It was expensive. And it was basically the history of Iran up to that point. And they'd filmed like reenactments that looked pretty damn good, but it was fascinating, especially watching it now where Iran is since the Islamic Revolution. But he interviewed the Shah when he was in power in his palace. And, you've seen it in your archive. You see a soundbite and you're like, oh, wow. And David Frost asked the Shah of Iran in 1976, some 2.5 years before the Islamic Revolution. He says, and I quote, "What would happen if the mullahs took over?" And the Shah looks at him and says, "It would set this country back 1,000 years.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
Just moments like that. So yes, I love discovering music, but I love history. And I also love how history intersects. So like when you watch, Hullabaloo or Shindig, and, you see these go-go dancers, at the same time that's going on in Vietnam, people are dying. It's just, it's very, weird. And so you see documentaries a lot of times that say, well, this is going on over here and that's going on over there. Yeah. And I always find that fascinating with archive, how these things just kind of connect. My brain works that way too.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen the John and Yoko film that Rosemary Rotondi did recently, but that changed my perception of a lot of Yoko. It's an incredible archive. I think that's a beautiful thing that we're in that space, that we can kind of add to the historical record effectively.
I think people who aren't deep in this industry don't appreciate what it is that we do. And they think, oh, come on, it's just 30 seconds, of a videotape, whatever, what's the big deal? Well, it's the work that goes into making this tape, this drive, what have you, the 2 inches, the 1 inches, the digital cams, the film, and that, to run the archive. It's, we're either chasing stuff or waiting for the phone to ring, but in the meantime, we're all investing money. You guys are doing obviously amazing work, but all the money you invest in your drone footage and your incredible footage like that doesn't just happen. You have to go shoot that footage. Then you have to hope someone licenses it to justify the money you're spending to not only shoot it, but to catalog it and all the rest of the things that you as an archive do.
Absolutely. I think we should go into that a little bit more. Take us through a case study effectively of how you take on an archive. You've got a scent for them, I think would be a fair thing to say, David. You do seem to turn over and find collections that people haven't found. And so just talk us through how you on board and what you actually do to bring an archive that's not been seen before to life.
Well, I use Merv because Merv was, insanity. So what happened was, long story short, at the time, this would have been 2011. Merv had passed, sadly, in 2007.
Can you just explain who Merv Griffin is to people, just culturally, if people don't know?
Merv Griffin was not just a legendary talk show host, but he created Jeopardy, created Wheel of Fortune, wrote the theme for Jeopardy, bought hotels. But he was a talk show host basically from 1962 to 86. And the interesting thing is that it was rumored that he might have taken over Johnny's spot. I mean, not Johnny's spot, instead of Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show. NBC didn't want to lose him, so they gave him his own show in the afternoon in the same studio that Johnny Carson taped his first show, and they would switch the set out every day. Anyhow, that didn't last very long, but then in 65, syndicated. And so he did about 5,000 shows. And of course, anyone watching this who's in the archive community knows that not everything was saved. And so out of 5,000 shows that were done between 1965 and 1986, I think we found somewhere close to 2,000. So I try to be the glass half full, but whenever the phone rings and go, oh, I understand so-and-so was on Merv, it's just like a knife to the chest. And not because, oh, okay, I lost a license, but just that history's gone. It's not here anymore. It's not here to be there for a director, producer to tell the story that they might have told differently because this piece of archive was there for them. So in the case of Merv, Phil and I walked into the vault where the tapes were stored in LA, and it literally was like the Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones. It was, floor to ceiling, a warehouse full of betas, 1-inch, 2-inch film, VHSs, pneumatics, cassettes, paperwork. And
Heaven.
my way of just tackling things is, rather than look at the totality of something, go, okay, I'm going to do this shelf today. I'm going to just take these. And so what happened was the 2-inch stuff, and I invested a lot of my own money. I sent to who I think is the best in the business at this type of stuff, a guy named David Crosswaite in LA. He runs in Burbank, runs a company called DC Video. He's like a mad scientist because he has every format you could ever think of. And sometimes he has to literally, I'm not exaggerating, wear a hazmat suit because some of the particles on these old tapes will get you really bad. Anyhow, the 2-inch stuff would go to David, but everything that I could do on my own, I did, 1-inch and betas. And so I would have Mark Serbo in my office. He would go to LA once a week, load up his car, would come down to San Diego. I would transfer everything. He'd go back, and it took quite a while. But then, okay, well, now I got the tapes. So now what? This is great. I have them here, but then I have to go through them all. And so, going through them all, it's a talk show. So in a talk show, you've got people like Dr. King, serious, and then you have juggling acts. Because Merv would do shows in Las Vegas, and of course, everything in between. And so if it's an artist, you got to figure out every song they're doing. If it's a medley, I break down medleys. I don't just write medley because I realize that if they're doing a medley of Frank Sinatra's hits or whatever, and maybe they sing, 15 seconds of My Way or Fly Me to the Moon, well, someone might want that. But if I just have my database medley, I don't know what's there. So I'm pretty meticulous about that type of stuff to know it, so it's available for the end user if they're looking for that. So cataloging everything took a lot of work. And one of the people that helped me, she worked with me for 17 years, and everyone out there knows her, is Jackie Clary. She was very instrumental in helping, catalog not just Merv, but Frost and a lot of other stuff. And, she's gone on to do great things in the archive community and research and clearance and producing and whatnot. But so Jackie Clary worked, here for quite a long time.
So it's a huge amount of work, and has that been similar with the Frost archive? Was that in a similar vein?
The irony is they were in the same storage facility in LA.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I didn't realize at the time. And it's funny because I told Wilford this not too long ago, because Wilford said something like, oh, I just, I happened to bump into David by chance in the aisle. And I went, it wasn't by chance. The person that ran the vault, had mentioned it and said he was going to be coming in the following week. I said, are you okay if I come and look at some tapes? He goes, sure, I'll introduce you. So I literally met Wilford in the aisle.
That's cool.
Yeah, a little bit of deception, but hey, but we've worked together now for 12 years. Yeah, 12 years. But yeah, and obviously I was very instrumental because of the work I did building his archive, that he was able to fulfill his dream of doing this program to honor his father's legacy. With the Frost Versus.
The Frost Versus has been a huge success. So I think certainly from a lot of people on the outside, I mean, the ability to become a producer and use this knowledge base, I mean, which is effectively what you've created, a knowledge base. Talk us through a little bit about your production side, and how do you get a nose for what you think will work for something like Stax or One of the Show or the Bee Gees and so forth? I mean, how does that progress? How do you go from holding the assets to actually developing from them?
Well, in the case of Bee Gees and Stax, I worked with Nigel Sinclair for a while, but not in that capacity. But as a footage holder. But we've always had a really good rapport. And I remember I think this was, I want to say 2019. Called me up and said, "I'd like and my staff to come down to your office." Okay, I mean, a big producer like that was like, okay, of course, made my office spotless. It's just like, okay, and it's like you're bringing a girl home for the first time on a date. Like my apartment better be perfect. And I'll never forget. It was Nigel, Nick, Cassidy, and Jeannie who were the production team there. And basically, what he said was, "Look, David, we want to work closely with you with your archive, but beyond that, your knowledge about the subjects." And I said, look, I just wanted to make sure that he wasn't trying to do some deal where, the archive would be free, because I can't do that. I have to, can't say to my clients, "Oh, by the way, I'm getting a producer credit, and sorry, I gave all your footage for free." They said, no, we understand that. I mean, I give them a better deal than others because it's volume, of course, but not, bargain basement to where I'm going to upset my clients by that. And so with my role in the films that I've done with them, whether it's executive producer or co-executive producer, generally that title is someone that wrote a check. Here's $100,000. That's not me. I'm not that guy. It's like, I don't want a credit if I didn't earn it. I don't need to see my name on a television. I mean, yes, of course, when we license footage, it's got to be Reelin In The Years because we did something. We licensed footage. But I don't want a special thanks. I don't want a producer credit if I don't feel I contributed something. My role in their films has been to look at the various cuts, and we talked about ways to save money. It's like, well, why are you going to use this Mike Douglas clip at Paramount that's going to cost you, and it's not a clip that's crucial to your film. And there are things where I realize, okay, that's Midnight Special, but I understand why you want to use it. Fine. So I'll make suggestions like that. I will look for historical inaccuracies. There was one in the Stax one. This is how just twisted my brain is. There was a stock footage shot of a record store rack in the 60s.
Right.
It was supposed to be the 60s, mind you. And I said, guys, you got to find another stock footage. What's wrong with that? And then go, there's an ELO record right in front. That's telephone line. That's 1976, 75, excuse me. Oh, and the other one was one of my favorites in the Bee Gees film. There was a scene where they were trying to convey the inner city for the groove of jive talking. And that was when the Bee Gees started to get into R&B and so forth. And this great B-roll of African-American teenagers walking in Manhattan with their Walkmans on. And I go, guys, that's wrong. What's a great shot? I go, yeah, but the Walkman didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
Oh. So I said, go find, a boombox or something that would be or more of the time. And I don't even know if that was either. And so they did things like that. And I'll suggest archive, and I'll go, well, gosh, Retro's got a great piece that's going to fit here, or Lola, or Historic, or Jessica, or something, or us, or the case may be. So when I'm in that role, I have to kind of take off my owning an archive hat as well. But it's also, I'm not going to lie and say it's not a blessing to be inside that tent, so to speak, because I am able to have the direct communication with the directors and go, have you seen this? This is really cool. This will really, I think, bring this scene to life. And I can't say what the film is because they're still doing it, but there's a film on a major artist that we discovered some really cool footage, and they went, oh my God, that's like near the end. That's not the end of the film. It's brilliant. And I'd seen the rough cut, and I thought this might really work there. And so, and that makes me feel good, because when I see the end work and I go, that was me. One of my favorite stories on the Bee Gees film that I tell is, again, going back to historical accuracy. All of the Bee Gees' career, they had always told this story about how they had written to love somebody after Otis Redding asked them to write a song. And I had done an Otis Redding film in 2007. I'm like, this didn't happen. This is just, it's BS. But I don't think it's deliberate BS. It's just, you tell a story enough time and you kind of believe it. So I got the rough cut of the Bee Gees, and they had the story in. And I went, guys, this didn't happen. Well, no. Barry says it did, blah, blah, blah. And I knew that I had to find a way to prove, not just say it didn't happen. I had to present evidence, like you're a lawyer in a courtroom. But okay, I said, first of all, when the Bee Gees met Otis Redding, this was April of 1966, they had one hit, New York Mining Disaster. Their music was so far removed from American soul, not even funny. There's nothing. Yeah. Second of all, Otis Redding didn't need a songwriter. He wrote all of his songs with Steve Cropper. Ironically, at the Lorraine Motel where Dr. King was killed, which is just a bit of trivia there. And I said, so he was a very accomplished songwriter. And when Otis Redding did covers, and I showed him the albums, he would do R&B covers or standards. He didn't do new stuff. Now, he covered the Beatles with Day Tripper and the Stones with Satisfaction. But primarily, I go, why would he ask someone to write a song for him? I said, here's what I guarantee happened. They met him backstage at the Apollo. Barry may have said something, we'll write a song for you. And Otis, polite, like anyone, went, that'd be great. And the other argument was in the story that they wrote it for Otis Redding and he died before they had a chance to record it. And I said, well, Otis Redding died in December of 1967. Bee Gees recorded it in May of 67, I think maybe in June. I go, Otis Redding had plenty of time. I said, in the weeks up to his death, he recorded 3 albums worth of material, and including covers. If he had wanted to record that song, he would have recorded that song. And so they saw the story and they went, okay. And they modified it. It's still a little bit there, but not. And I just felt good because, okay, let it be truthful, whatever that story is. Yeah. And it's their film, but I at least present it to them. And so it's very cool to be able to do that.
Are we going to lose the historical record because we're not really having a way to archive the stuff, and there aren't these kind of like Top of the Pops and these shows going out where they're kept,
But I guess my concern is, the people that have these tapes, they're withering away. I mean, they're only going to last so long. And, they don't want to spend the money to do it. I mean, like this morning, it aired this morning, your interview with Andy from ITV.
Yeah.
And, that I'm so happy that they're investing, millions of dollars to preserve these tapes. And, whether or not anyone sees them or not is secondary to the fact, preserve the history, preserve it. History is important to preserve, whether it's visual, recording, what have you. And I think that's what all of us do here. I mean, the two of us, we run mom and pop companies, represent and have new material. But then there's the people that do the research and clearance, and they're just as important because they're the liaison between us and person making those films. And, I think people a lot of times, not us, but maybe more of the bigger companies or corporate lose sight of the importance of the Jackie Clarys, the Jessica Bogdans, the Kathy Carapellas, and the Kate Griffiths and whatnot. And shout out to everyone if I didn't mention your name. Just off the top of the dome, as it were.
Can you talk us about the step-by-step guide of the best way to work with Reelin In The Years? If I'm an archive producer and I'm working on a music doc, what's the best way to work with you?
Well, we always prefer, and others like differing opinions in our industry. And maybe because I'm going to be 60 this year, so I've got an older mentality, which could be a blessing and a curse, depending on how you look at things. But my philosophy is, I think of myself as a salesman, right? We're salespeople. Someone comes to Lola, you're putting your thinking cap on. What can I show them from my archive that I think they're going to use? And so there's 2 ways. There are archives that just have it all in their database. Don't bother me. I want to be bothered. I enjoy being bothered. I insist you bother me because I cannot tell you how many times someone has come to me for one thing and said, we need Jimi Hendrix doing Purple Haze. I'm making that up, but that's an example. Wait, what are you working on? Oh, we're doing, greatest guitarist of all time. wait a minute. Why not Prince? Why not Clapton? Why not Tom? Yeah, but we got enough stuff. I go, yeah, but you haven't seen my stuff here, and then it will turn into a sale. Whereas my philosophy is stock footage, I realize is very different. So that's a different beast. But I'm talking about interview-based, performance-based archive right now. If I have a chance to communicate with you and understand, again, putting maybe my director, producer, hat on and go inside your project. Have you thought about this? This is a really cool piece of footage. And so that's, I mean, it's kind of not quite the way you expected the answer to be because you asked best way to work. But generally, if I get an email from someone, I usually like to speak to them on the phone. But if it's pretty obvious and I know them really well, then I'm just like, okay. We require anyone who wants to get our archive to sign a screener agreement. And that screener agreement is basic. It just simply says you're under no obligation to use anything of us, but from these archives, and we list the archives, you may not claim fair use, fair dealing, regardless if you pull it off YouTube or something else, because it's just too much of that going on. So that's one of the main things that we insist upon, where I realize other archives don't. But we don't charge for screeners, which most people don't. Some do. And, they have corporate policies, and I totally respect that. And so our goal is to get the footage to the client as soon as humanly possible, and clean and neat, and that it makes sense.
Quick question. I mean, you have like the official documentaries that are coming out, with, I think there's one on Marianne Faithfull, there's those type of documentaries, but then you have a lot of these unofficial docs. Does that make a difference when you're choosing, and how do you approach both those? Because if you're working with the artist, it must be difficult if it's an unofficial doc.
Well, I don't work with the artist directly, obviously. And with any archive, and I'm sure you have the same in your agreements, we're only licensing the footage. And if it's a live recording, okay. But any underlying rights, image and likeness, music publishing, unions and guilds, which don't apply as much in Europe as they certainly do in America, the end user has to indemnify me and my clients. Now, I will say, we don't do tabloid. And we got numerous calls about P. Diddy footage. And we have this great footage of him, innocent, that my client shot at like a youth camp in the 90s. And he had set up some summer camp for underprivileged kids. And, all jokes aside about Diddy, obviously, the footage is innocent, this footage. But I knew damn well what they wanted to do with it. And while I have my feelings on Diddy, as we all do, I don't ever want to be part of that. Like, I don't license footage of Michael Jackson when it deals with the allegations against him. Or if it's Jimi Hendrix, how he died, it's like, I don't care. It's celebrating. So what I've found is even projects that don't necessarily have the artist involved per se, if it's a positive project, the artists don't have issues.
Yeah.
It's
that makes sense.
When you're slandering them. And so I don't want to be in a situation where not only put myself and my clients in legal risk, but equally important, I don't feel it's morally right. I don't feel it's right that an artist that appeared in a television show 50 years ago, regardless whether they're guilty or not, should have that piece of footage beaten over the head. And I had someone recently in England doing something on Gary Glitter. I went, no, we have great Gary Glitter footage. I go, I know. And for those that don't know, just type in Gary Glitter in Thailand, and we'll leave it at that. we'll just leave it at that.
I think he's in Vietnam now.
Sporting events stop playing his rock and roll song. You don't hear that. Hey, put it this way. I cringe when I have footage with Jimmy Savile. And so I won't even license Jimmy Savile introducing the Stones. And Brits, I don't need to tell. For those who are not in England, Google Jimmy Savile. Again, I don't have to, you'll understand. But even so, if someone, all joking aside, was going to do a documentary on Savile, no, I'm not doing it. Even though it seems that, and he died before, he could ever be tried in a court of law, but certainly the evidence does not look in his favor without saying anything slanderous on here.
No, I completely get it.
I won't do it. I don't post political stuff on my business. It's like, I'm not here to drive customers away. Someone disagrees with me politically. It's not.
David, so we want people to come away with a real knowledge of what you've got? What corners of the archive, what corners of the collections aren't being found?
Wow, that's a real tough question because I don't necessarily think, because I have so many clients. And of course, when I'm negotiating, I have to compartmentalize, right? Because I look at the contracts. But if it's a subject, I'm just thinking about, okay, well, what's from this archive? What's from that archive back there that's going to be relevant to the project? So, it's funny because prior to 2011, I was just music. I mean, that's all I did. I didn't even touch it. And I remember when the Merv Griffin collection came on my radar, I went to Phil, and it was Phil's the one that changed this company. And he goes, David, get it all. We haven't done non-music. I said, what are you kidding me? Take the whole damn thing and we'll figure it out. I'm like, okay. And so, it went from obviously 100% of my clip licensing was just music to where now 35 to 40% of my overall clip revenue is non-music, which is pretty amazing to jump. And so we have talk shows, but even beyond talk shows, we have press junkets and all these different types of things. And, they're all really important. I mean, I can't say what the product is, but we did just do a very nice license for a major, and it'll be out in a couple weeks. And those don't happen too often, as you well know.
Yeah.
But when those happen, it's Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Ramadan, all in one. It's a beautiful day. But yes, it was nice. But that was a soundbite of a well-known actor. We'll leave it at that.
We'll watch this space for more.
Trust me, you've heard of this individual. And
okay.
when it comes out in a couple of weeks, yes.
Okay, cool. We'll look forward to that.
Yeah.
So listen, we have a quick fire round that we do. Kind of put you in the hot seat.
Okay. Wait a minute. Let me get my water here.
Okay. So David, are you ready?
I thought this was Stephen Colbert's questionnaire thing. Okay.
This is the archive lightning round. So quick questions, quick answers. Just say whatever comes into your head first off. Yeah?
Yeah, but if I don't like what's there, I'm going to censor myself. Which people don't about me. They go, he censors himself? Trust me. So, okay, go ahead.
Okay, first one. First word that you associate with the word archive.
History.
Okay. Music performance or music interviews? Which pulls you in more?
Performance.
Okay, then. So, performance footage or behind the scenes?
Behind the scenes, which would depend what that behind the scenes is. But yes, behind the scenes.
The footage that still gives you chills.
It's not even mine, but to this day, I mean, I have an audio recording of it. It's from a show called Soul, which is handled by WPA, and it's Al Green in late 1972 doing, which he never recorded, We've Only Just Begun, into Let's Stay Together.
Wow.
Now I have chills. I mean, Google it. It's there. It is just, the only time that to my knowledge that he ever did it, maybe in concert, but in front of the camera. And it's just, so it's not even an archive that I handle, but it's just one that it's on my playlist, put it this way, in my favorite R&B songs of all time. And it's just, it's just Google Al Green, We've Only Just Begun on Soul, SOUL, exclamation point. It's you'll be like, yes, it's good. I mean, it's not mine, but again, archive is archive.
Okay. Archive that feels more powerful today than when it was filmed.
I mean, something simple like the I Have a Dream speech.
Yeah.
I think, things of that nature.
The most understood thing about archives.
The most understood thing or misunderstood?
Misunderstood.
That it's easy. Anyone could do it. And, it should be for free. That it should just be given out to everyone. So I think that, and I think everyone who owns an archive, runs an archive, works at an archive, I can all see you now going, what he said.
Yes. A moment you can't believe has been captured on film.
So we have an archive called This Is Your Life. And it ran from 1952 to 71. I know Fremantle has a This Is Your Life, which it's related in the sense that the people that started the original one licensed the name to them. But we don't have that archive. We have 52 to 71, and then later on, 1955, excuse me. And this would have been 10 years after the war. And I say this story, by the way, with my wife being a Japanese citizen and my kids being half Japanese. So setting this up. So they had a doctor on who had survived Hiroshima, and he had dedicated his life to reconstructive surgery for people that were affected by burning and so forth. And so for those of you that don't know what This Is Your Life is, generally, whether it was a celebrity or someone not famous, they would surprise them on a television show, and then they bring people out from their past and what. And it's a very cool show. Anyhow, boy, was this one a surprise. You know what I mean, Tom?
Yeah.
So here's this Japanese man, survived Hiroshima, talking about the horrors of it and helping people, victims of it, with plastic surgery. And at the end of the show, they brought on the co-pilot of the Enola Gay, which of course, I can see Sandra's face, which of course was the plane that dropped the bomb. Now, the Japanese doctor did not know about this. And to the man's credit, he was very emotional. And, I'm sorry, but it was just one of those moments that, and we have that up online if you want to go see it.
Did you know that Hiroshima had been the first city to feel the force of atomic power?
Well, I didn't know what happened.
But as your mind clears, you think of your wife and baby, your church, your parishioners, all somewhere in the enveloping dust. You start to run toward the city saying, "My God, help them."
And looking down from thousands of feet over Hiroshima, all I could think of was, my God, what have we done?
The voice again of a man whose second of eternity was woven up with yours, Reverend Tanimoto. Now, you've never met him, have never seen him, but he's here tonight to clasp your hand in friendship. Captain Robert Lewis, United States Air Force, who along with Paul Tibbets piloted the plane from which the first atomic power was dropped over Hiroshima. Captain Lewis, come in here close, and would you tell us, sir, of your experience on August 6, 1945?
Well, Mr. Edwards, we left Tinian in the Mariana Islands at about 2:45 in the morning on August the 6th, 1945. Our destination was Japan. We had 3 targets. One was Hiroshima, one was Nagasaki, one was Kokura. About an hour before we hit the coastline of Japan, we were notified that Hiroshima was clear. Therefore, Hiroshima became our target. Just before 8:15 a.m., Tokyo time, Tom Farabee, a very able bombardier, carefully aimed at his target, which was the 2nd Imperial Japanese Army headquarters. 8:15 promptly, the bomb was dropped. We turned fast to get out of the way of the deadly radiation and bomb effects. First was the big flash that we got, and then the 2 concussion waves hit the ship. Shortly after, we turned back to see what had happened. And there in front of our eyes, the city of Hiroshima disappeared.
Now, you entered something in your log at that time.
As I said before, Mr. Edwards, I wrote down later, my God, what have we done?
And so, Reverend Tanimoto, you on the ground and you on your military mission, Captain Lewis, in the air, both appeal to a power greater than your own. Thank you, Captain Robert Lewis, now personnel manager of Henry Heide Incorporated in New York City.
But it's pretty horrific to see that was done. But here's the thing. You can look at it and go, that is just, ooh, that's really bad, I did it. But with an archive going, what an amazing piece of archive. Both things can be true. I mean, look, if you had an interview with Adolf Hitler talking about why he wanted to kill the Jewish population, it would be horrific, disgusting, on and on and on. But the piece of archive, it would be to illustrate how horrible a person he was and so forth. So
it's incredibly powerful. I mean, in so many ways.
And it's only, I mean, imagine if you will, and now we're almost 25 years later, but imagine if you will, on some show, they brought out, and they're alive, one of the masterminds of 9/11, and there's someone who's, survived the towers or something, because most people didn't survive that day, but, or the Pentagon or whatever, and brought that person out as a surprise. I don't think that would sit too well with the American public. So, I mean, honestly, we're at a different time now, but wow. But another one that was interesting, not quite in the same vein, but on the Merv Griffin show in 1965, he brought on one of the architects of Pearl Harbor. And he came on Merv's show, and I remember in the introduction, Merv saying something like, to the audience, just hear him out. Now, this individual became a born-again Christian, I guess, in 49. And so that was kind of the narrative. But he did talk about this. But, only 20 years later, 24 years after attack on Pearl Harbor is pretty amazing. Okay, I'm gonna turn the tables on you. I'm gonna ask you. Well, you run an archive, so I'm gonna ask you guys something in your archive that you feel like, in the same way that I just described this being moving and powerful and so forth. Something in your archive.
And we were logging something the other day, which is an ITV World in Action report from 1960s, and they're outside of CIA headquarters, and they're talking about the hidden kind of agenda of the CIA at the time, and the police come out and move this kind of very British crew out the way from reporting in front of the CIA building, and it's like, wow. How the world hasn't changed in 50 odd years.
I was thinking, that's really cool.
But it's the power of archive. I mean, I think, we are coming towards the end of our time, David. And so I want to firstly say thank you very much for taking the time, sharing.
It's been a lot of fun.
It's been brilliant. We're delighted that you've come on. One thing that we always kind of try and end on, and just, your crystal ball moment, as a whole, the industry, where do things look in 10 years' time? And what's the future look like for either for the industry as a whole or for your company, either one?
I mean, obviously at the moment, and I think we're all feeling it, it's certainly slower than any of us would like it. Because I know if I'm doing well, you're doing well. If you're doing well, Retro's doing well. If Retro's doing well, Global Image Works is doing well, and on and on and on. So, I talk to my clients, give them statements, and like, well, it's not as much that, it's okay, it's decent, but it's definitely, so I do think, ebb and flow, but at the end of the day, I do think that, and we talked about this a little bit, Sandra, at the private roundtable we had about AI at Footage Fest, is that, sure, AI could, I guess, create the collapsing of the towers on 9/11, could certainly recreate bombing in Vietnam and at some point, and maybe believable AI. But they're not going to recreate Marlon Brando on the Dick Cavett show. They're not going to create the Beatles, in front of the Queen for those with cheaper seat, radio jewelry or Frost Nixon or what have you. And so I feel that people want reality and they want truth. And AI, the way I've described it is, and you can quote me on that, is a fucking lie. And so I think after a while, people are going to get tired. Oh, it's really cool. That kind of sort of looks like John Lennon. But then it's like, well, I want to see John Lennon, or I want to see whoever that may be. I want to see reporters getting shuffled away in front of the CIA building, 1967. And so I think AI is a curiosity. I'm not dismissing the good that AI can do, and I'm not dismissing what it's doing to the industry, but I still think people want real. I guess I would say it this way. If you're a guy and you go into a bar and you're like, you want to find a nice woman to date, are you going to go to the one that seems natural or the one that has so much freaking Botox and everything else? She may look attractive for a while, but just, you know what I mean? And by the way, that applies to women to men as well, both ways. I think people want real. And so I hope that what's going on with AI will help, like when we're storing a film, maybe get scratches out of the film, bring the colors up, those types of things, but not put an image in there that isn't there. We all remember Forrest Gump, and, that was how crude that was. Tom Hanks playing ping pong with the Chinese in 73 or whatever it was. It's cute. Never thought we'd ever be here. So for the future, I think people always want to look back. I think they always want to look back, whether it's a document of the CIA or a document of the Beatles or what have you, and the archive that we collectively have in this world and represent and whatnot, I think is there. And I think, obviously we run a business, but I think all of us are doing good work. I think we're all doing important work collectively to preserve it for my kids and their kids and so forth, because without this documentation, someone else is going to write the narrative of what happened. I mean, look, we have places in this country where they're trying to rewrite what slavery was about. And in the case of slavery, there are some photographs, but there's not moving image. And there is some footage that I've seen of people that were slaves interviewed, early 1900s or whatever. But that part of history could be open to interpretation because people need to see with their own eyes, which is ridiculous. But so I do think all of this archive is important. I would encourage all libraries, what ITV is doing and other ones, spend the money. But you made it, preserve it.
It's a good ending, I think. A good message to end.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, David, thanks again. Really appreciate your time. It's been a delight to have you on. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I hope that it was informative and not too much in the weeds for people that aren't in our industry.
Thanks for listening to The Archive Room, a podcast about the people, process, and power behind archive footage. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do support us by subscribing, rating us, and sharing this podcast with somebody who cares about documentaries, history, or just how stories are built from the past. And please drop us a comment with guests or archive worlds that you think we should explore next. We're open to ideas. See you next time.